Our first story tonight concerns a humble little publication created right here in Iowa. In order to stay in step with its country bluntness, we're going to keep our comments to a minimum and get right to it. We just want to tell you that it's called the Wapsipinicon Almanac, and though totally unassuming, it is as pretty and as thought-provoking and as winding and as alive as the valley from which it takes its name.
Laying low out on the land, known to the Indians as the river of shifting sand.
Legend has it that long ago when the Indians roamed Iowa, there was an Indian maiden named Wapsi who lived along the banks of this river with her father. In another tribe, 2 days away toward the setting sun, there lived a Sioux warrior named Pinicon, and Pinicon fell in love with Wapsi. Pinicon's rival, Fleetfoot, was very jealous and determined to kill Pinicon. And one day when the two lovers were canoeing on the river, Fleetfoot was watching them from the shore. In a flash, an arrow went and pierced Pinicon in the heart. Wapsi leaned forward to help him, the canoe overturned, and the two lovers fell into the waters closing over them. Wapsi, Pinicon. Now some people say you can still hear the voices of these two in the rippling stream that bears their name. Publisher Timothy Fay describes the almanac as an amalgam of writing, artwork, and ads, mostly from small towns and rural scenes. It's a mixed bag, like your stringer of fish pulled from the Wapsi. Some of it a bit rough, more of it worth saving. Mr. Thoreau reminded us
that in wildness is the preservation of the world. That was good advice. So let's take a float down a tree-lined, just right-sized river. We'll join that guy on the cover. There's room in his canoe. My first almanac was put together in the spring of 1988. To somebody who didn't know what we were doing, I'd say this was a magazine describing the best parts of eastern Iowa as we see them and discussing how we can preserve those things and make eastern Iowa a better place to live. A lot of nostalgia magazines will avoid the real hard topics, and I have pieces in here that really address what's wrong with rural Iowa. But I like to think that we offer some solutions too. It's just not all negative. I don't think people want to read just a negative magazine, and I think that the small is beautiful concept would apply to a lot of the people who write for and read the magazine too. My advertisers would be almost entirely small businesses. A lot of them would be cottage industries, businesses run out of the home. I went to school and studied journalism and fell into the printing. My uncle in Anamosa was a printer years ago, and he helped me start out. But I wanted to be self-employed, and I figured this would be the best way to do it. I learned that it's an awful lot of work, but that it was fun work. I want to put out one a year, and I want to try to present good writing that's well edited. I want to just keep employing the talents of some of our local writers and artists from this part of the state.
Pessimist. A person who complains of the noise when opportunity knocks.
On buying shoes. To get comfortably fitting shoes, buy them in the afternoon when the exercise of the day has expanded your feet to their fullest extent.
Fish and visitors stink after 3 days.
If you tell the truth, you don't have to remember anything.
Free country, where a person can say what he thinks, if not afraid of spouse, boss, neighbors, and if sure it won't hurt his business.
Titled Our Abundant Landscape, this section includes how-to articles on raising apples, prairie establishment, and organic farming. An Herb is an Herb encourages the use of herbs in gardening, cooking, and medicine.
I'm Jo Campbell Amsler. The name of my business is Of Herbs and Forest. I'm located at Rural Route 1, Monticello, Iowa. The shop is primarily geared toward making herbaries and bouquets, and I'm also a willow basket maker and a variety of other wild materials that I go out and gather. I can kind of choose my own hours when I want to work, and I'm a country person, so I like being out in the country. I thought it had some really interesting articles in it. Some of them even brought tears to my eyes, and after I finished my copy, I went and bought about half a dozen more for Christmas presents because I thought it was just so true to the area. I thought it sounded like something that needed to be done, and I wanted to help support it.
Articles in the To Town section deal with a store closing and the realities faced by small-town businessmen when a giant retailer builds a store on the edge of town. But another article discovers eastern Iowa's hidden treasures, small-town cafes.
The outside of the town tap is not very promising. A flashing rusted arrow points down at the door, and another sign says, Steak and Fish House, breakfast, lunch, and dinner open 7 days a week. But the general appearance is well seasoned. Cheap reproductions of uninteresting paintings, hawk and other mirror art line the pre-finished plywood paneled walls. On the back wall I read, I can get an all-I-can-eat fish dinner for $4.99, but I'm here for chicken. The 2-piece dinner is just $2.95, and the 4-piece, $4.05. The bean salad was cool, crisp, and delicious, with shreds of carrot and onion adding to the visual effect and flavor. My companion's coleslaw was equally satisfying. A discerning hand guided their preparation. Now to the chicken. It was too hot to bite into before. Oops, still too hot. Let me try my companion's fish. She is smiling, and I see why. Very, very good. Let's try the chicken again. Yes, that's good. Crisp, crackly skin, extremely flavorful. When the waitress, who was very good, by the way, comes around, I ask, what's the secret to the tasty chicken? Is it a secret recipe?
Nope, it's just chicken.
I sense evasiveness and press my question. She replies,
No, it's just chicken with roaster flour on it. Cooked in the roaster. That's it.
well, there you have it. The chicken is as good as people say, and now we both know why.
FB and Company was constructed in 1868 by Franklin Braun and Ignatius Beek. The basement and first floor were a general store, while the 2 upper floors served as living and guest quarters. It's now a bar and restaurant serving the best and only food in Wabeek, as the crow flies about 15 miles northeast of Cedar Rapids.
Our visit to the river valleys in the area uncovered long-forgotten history, and our guide, Gus Norlin, writes of the flight and massacre of Chief Black Hawk's tribe in Escape Through the Jordan Valley. Gus took us to the site where they rested and buried their dead on a lonesome knoll.
You walk the steep hillside up from the long, narrow ravines that twist through the Jordan Creek area to a quiet knoll covered in prairie grass and sumac. Then, 156 years ago, as legend has it, it became the final resting place on a long and bitter trail. It's a legend known to a very few. The burial site is known to only 3 living persons. A young farmer heard it in the 1850s from the Indians of the tribes. The young farmer grew old and told it to his grandson, who he knew would be interested. The grandson also grew to be an old man. A bachelor, he had no one to whom to pass along the secret. The old man decided to show Gus and Mary Norlin the location of the burial site. And in nearly 20 years since they've known, Gus Norlin has shown only one other person, me. In 1965, Gus and Mary took rakes up to the knoll, cleared off the grass, and gently raked back the dirt from the grave markers. Together they uncovered the markers of 4 graves before stopping work. The markers were unmistakable, Gus told me. It must have been a powerful moment for them, standing on that quiet bluff.
McNeil hardware merchant since 1910. The better the store, the more things it carries that are loose in wooden bins or little metal drawers. A good hardware store has been there a long time, and the building is too small. The best ones are crammed from the floor to ceiling. The countertops and shelves overflow into aisles. The New York Times.
As for being a unique store, we modernize in a certain effect, but still we keep the old flavor and the old color in the store. In the Wapsipinicon Almanac, I enjoyed that magazine very much, and I was sort of skeptical at first, is this thing going to take off? But looking at Tim and the energy he was putting into it, I knew it would, and we put the ad in, and then it worked very well.
Filling the Cumberland Gap was written by Floyd Pierce, a printer who returned to Iowa after living in San Francisco for 35 years.
I remembered my childhood more or less accurately, but I'd idealized small-town life. At that time, I was pretty certain I couldn't find the answers in the small towns of Iowa or in its cornfields. I'm much less certain of this now. For financial reasons, it was necessary to settle in a very small town. on Main Street in Cumberland, population 315, I found a handsome brick building waiting for me. But what's it like living in a small town? Main Street in Cumberland fails miserably in its attempt to be 2 blocks long. There are no lines, no traffic, no parking problems. Frequently you can see more rabbits and squirrels on Main Street than people. Social life is built around the churches and clubs and fraternal organizations. The social structure is rigid. Wealth and old families hold precedence. In cities, you are what you do and how much you earn. My being an impoverished printer of modern poetry places me very low on the social scale. It is no wonder so many of the best and brightest leave. Hell, if you were any good, you wouldn't be here. Well, I am good, and I am here. The only good thing lacking in Iowa is Iowa's good opinion of itself. I have seen and experienced a deep warmth, a concern, and a fundamental humanity here that puts the lie to all that's trivial and twisted in the small-town psyche. I know this will be the most important work to come from my press. I work, and I expect the daily miracle, because I know it happens. Tim's done a beautiful piece of design. The format is just a knockout. It's visually exciting. The whole mix of Iowa history, Iowa writers, and land stewardship. It makes a beautiful combination. I'm proud to be a part of it.
The name of our band is too long in this condition. Craig Hazelbaker, Gala Steele, Letha Hazelbaker, and we specialize in the traditional Celtic music of Ireland and Scotland. Letha and I have started a small business called Acoustic Legacy, and we specialize mostly in the acoustic musical instruments, all kinds of bagpipes, traditional Irish flutes, Irish accordions, perhaps dulcimers. We have a lot of very interesting things.
The spirit of the almanac dwells in the heart of artist Terry Rathje, living and working along the banks of the Wapsipinicon.
The river's been the main subject matter of a lot of my own artwork that I do for my own enjoyment. I do a lot of photography along the Wapsi, so I have a slug of pictures and I just start thumbing through the pictures and pretty soon something hits me. I liked it here when I was little. There was something about the Wapsi that just intrigued me. Everybody that lived along the Wapsi seemed like they were different from all the people that lived in town. I guess part of it is that since I live so close to the river, that they have close ties to nature. Since I live along the Wapsi, I have sort of the feeling for what Tim's trying to do.
A pinch of poetry, a dash of fiction, and a sprinkling of book reviews are left to round out this first issue of an extraordinary magazine. This year's edition will include the following poem, which faithfully reflects the inspiration for the almanac, the Wapsipinicon.
Wapsipinicon, white potato, swan apple, edible root of Sagittaria. The sack fox named you for the practical thing, starchy root of arrowhead growing in the wet places. They came to gather along your banks and backwaters, up your tiny tributaries, from spongeland prairies in the north, as far south as the Mississippi, for even the smallest of you has its backwaters. Imagine the watershed. How much of the unbroken prairie and wooded floodplain abide in this new river, still supple in its slow gait despite the bitter lesson of farming, the farmer in love with land, resentful when the river claims its portion. On the disturbed banks, nettles and ragweed grow dense above half-submerged junked cars, dropped along the outside bends to break the water's force. Who remembers when the Wapsipinicon ran wild over glacial rubble? At some spots the channel is choked to a muddy sheet, or else it staggers like a drunk from bank to bank, dropping its load. A canoer knows it needs the good flushing of a flood. The Wapsi does a humble job, reducing upland elevations, hauling them as far as they will go, past the table where the farmer earns and spends $1 million before breakfast and is always broke. There is effluent from the factory that makes the water shine an instant only, and then it wraps inside the steady brown. There are still the springs that join it, from caves and secret dens. Imagine what we see and know and what it may become and what it was. Gone is the pound of turbine wheels, the rumble of burr runs grinding wheat. The people who built the fish traps and who came to pull the root of Arrowhead from the muck are longer gone, but hold a faster claim. Wapsipinicon, Wapsipinicon. So let's have no more nonsense about Princess Wapsi and her lover Pinicon. What we need are river practicalities to get our water lives in order. Healthy, haunted river in its gloom or brightness, where the living are just a kind of water, die and are pulled into the current, lodged against an underwater stone until the current nudges them free. Let us be joyful in its faultless trickle to join the water that makes the world.
Roll Wapsipinicon, laying low out on the land, known to the Indians as the river of shifting sand.
If you're the type of person who develops deep emotional attachments to things like broken-in leather shoes, then the Wapsipinicon Almanac is for you.